So I think I'll start out with introductions, and we'll have everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll get back to our panel. So my name is Heather Brewer. I work at Strongbridge Envision Consulting. I've been in management consulting for 25 years. 15 of those were overseas in Spain, UK, and across Latin America. Right now at Strongbridge Envision, I manage our relationships and delivery, our work at Microsoft, Expedia, and also all new business in the West region. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Carly.
Thanks, Heather. I'm Carly Barocas, CEO of Barocas Communications. We are a PR firm based here in Seattle and Denver, working with our clients across media relations, social, influencer, and content. I've been in the tech industry for about 20 years and have primarily worked with cloud companies over that time, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys today.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Bergman. I'm the founder and CEO of Integra Software. We're a software company that helps companies comply with all of those new data privacy laws that are coming out around the globe. Lots of murmurs and laughs. Lots of companies aren't laughing too much about it. But basically what we do is we map data using machine learning, natural language processing, apply policies to it, and help people take action on it and reduce their risk. Prior to that, I worked in venture capital for 4 years, investing in companies in cloud and big data, security, IoT, wearable technology. And then prior to that, I was actually at Microsoft for 7.5 years. And then before that was at a number of business intelligence companies.
My name's Amy Nelson. I am the CEO and founder at The Riveter. We are, thank you, I think there are some Riveters in the audience. We're a network of community and workspaces built by women for everyone. We are 20 months old, and we have 5 spaces across Washington and California, and we're opening more than 10 this year across the US. I am also pregnant with my 4th daughter in 4 years, so also slightly out of my mind. And prior to starting The Riveter, I was an attorney for a decade and also a political fundraiser.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So when we were thinking about this panel, the path to the C-suite, we got together and had some meetings and really started brainstorming for each of us what were 3 or 4 of the major nuggets that helped us get to the C-suite? What are some traits and differentiators that helped us along the way? And as we kind of talked through and really compared notes, we realized 4 main themes were really resonating. One was risk-taking, really throughout the career, embracing the uncomfortable, authenticity, and also just how to achieve leadership in tech. So with that, I am going to have each of our panelists talk about how risk-taking impacted their career to the C-suite.
Yeah, so my story of coming to the C-suite, I think, might be a little bit different than a lot of people's. My husband and I are co-owners of our business, and I worked in the business for 20 years before just recently taking over the CEO role last year. So I worked on the client side for about 15 years, and then over the last several years have worked on the operations side of the business. And moving into the CEO role, there was a lot of risk, not only for myself, but for our company as well. So, having one person in that role for so long, your company becomes very associated with that person's identity. And so one of the things that I had to make clear when I took over that role is that I am my own person. Even though my husband and I are married, we have very different personalities. We are like yin and yang, but together we work really well. But my leadership philosophy is a little bit different. So just coming into that, you really have to be very clear on what your expectations are, very clear about your management and leadership style, and where you want to move your company moving forward. So I think, there's always a risk. People may like it, people may not like it, but you have to be really confident in your conviction and what you're doing and how you're going to take those steps to move your company forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Carly. Christina?
My path to the C-suite was kind of a direct one. This is actually the 3rd company I've started. Right out of high school, I started one, and that ended up paying for business school, which was great. It was a house painting company. And then the second one was during business school as a drive-in movie theater. And one was the worst experience of my life, and the other one was just a ton of fun. But it definitely kind of put the bug in me. And so by the time I ended up working at a venture capital fund, it became obvious I wanted to start a company of my own again. And so one of the first things that they teach you when you join the firm is that the biggest outcomes come from market creating companies, not just ones that chase after ones, but one that defines a net new market, a net new opportunity. And the way you do that is by looking at what's happening in the market, what's happening in technology, look at those changes, and then go out and create a company that's just that one step ahead of where people currently are. And one of the things that struck me years ago when the whole Edward Snowden thing happened was how surprised everybody else was about how governments are collecting and using data and how companies are collecting and using data. Because as someone who spent decades in that world selling that kind of software to companies and governments to do exactly that, it wasn't surprising. And so I thought, there's going to be public backlash. I saw Angela Merkel be visibly angry on TV, and she's pretty stone-faced, so to get a reaction out of her is kind of hard. And I thought, gosh, there's going to be backlash, and it's going to be in the form of regulation. There's got to be a company I can invest in that's going to take advantage of this new wave of fury that's sweeping over the world. And sure enough, within 6 months, they announced this thing called GDPR. And I read through it, and my first thought was, oh, companies are so screwed. Nobody knows where their data is. For decades, we've been selling them technology that makes, data highly redundant, lots of failovers, backups, geographic dispersion. And now these laws are coming and saying, you have to find where all of it is and be able to delete it. And I'm thinking, no, they're not. That's not how companies work. It's cheaper to keep it than it is to delete it. You people are crazy. So there's got to be a company to invest in. And I spent about 2 years interviewing Fortune 500 companies and asking the same 5 questions. Is this a problem? How are you dealing with it? What are the technical challenges? Are you using any technology today that could solve it, or could you repurpose anything to solve it? And if I found something, would you buy it? And if so, how much would you pay? And across every company, with one exception, Facebook, they said it's a huge problem. We don't know how to deal with it. No technology's out there, and yeah, we'd pay for it. And so I looked for 2 years to find a company to invest in, and then GDPR passed into law, and I thought, okay, all right, I know how to build technology, I know how to start companies, and I know how to raise money and who to raise it from. It's go time, baby. This is the opportunity. So I ended up leaving my cushy job in venture capital and taking a huge risk and saying, hey, I'm leaving to start a company, and I'm going to go and fundraise. And the nice part was that, and this is a little bit unusual, because of the relationships I already had with VCs in the industry, my fundraise was actually extremely quick. It was 2 phone calls in 2 weeks long, which is extremely abnormal. Yeah, it was great. And along those lines, I also took another big risk, which was asking my board, my incoming board, to accept a new clause in our articles of incorporation that would allow me to remove them in the event of sexual harassment. Because if you guys remember, big problem. And I had to have the super awkward conversation with my incoming board members of, hey, look, I want to introduce a clause that lets me get rid of you if you behave badly. Cool? And as you can imagine, sweating profusely, all that kind of stuff, and just kind of had to deal with that aspect of it. But it turns out, picked the right board. They were awesome. They were super enthusiastic. And the reactions was, of course, I don't know why this clause doesn't automatically exist. You bet we should have that. And so that was part of my risk-taking journey, was not just risking leaving the comfort of a high-paying, very secure job to start my own company. It was also the risk of potentially harpooning that dream before I even got started by standing up for something that I believe very firmly in and sticking really hard to my values. And so that was a big risk, and it ended up panning out because I bet on the right investors and the right people.
Amazing.
Thanks, Christina.
Amazing. I wish fundraising was as easy for me. I hate you. No, okay, no. But so I, came to this role after being a litigator for a decade, and maybe one of the reasons I didn't love lawyering very much is that I actually really like risk, and lawyering is really all about mitigating risk. And I think when I think about my own risk-taking journey, I think the story that's super important to tell is the idea of taking risk and of taking big risk. Because when I came up with the idea for the Riveter, I was still lawyering. I was on maternity leave with my second child. And I knew I wanted to start a business and started looking at where I would go to work and find community and talk to women who'd done this before. This conference did not yet exist. And I couldn't find it. I was going to different co-working spaces. I was going to different classes that were held at co-working spaces, and I really felt like they didn't reflect where I wanted to be. And so I thought at that point that maybe the answer was to build my own space like that because I needed it. And that's where the idea for the Riveter came from. And when I had the idea, I thought I would build one, because that made sense to me. And it wasn't until a few months later when I called up a friend of mine who was a startup attorney, and I said, you know, I have this idea to build this co-working space. Should I form an LLC or a C Corp? And he said, let's get a drink in a few days, and we did. And I thought he was going to tell me I had a bad idea, because that's kind of where my confidence was. I'd never started a business. And he said, you know, why are you building one of these? Why wouldn't you build 100? And I said, I don't have an MBA. I've never done this. I'm not qualified. And he's like, why don't you go home and read about people who have founded other companies, like read about Mark Zuckerberg finding Facebook, read about the founders of WeWork, and gave me a lot of examples of men who'd started companies. And so I went home and I read all these bios of all these people, and I was really like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I think part of it is that we don't see women starting a lot of venture scale companies. In 2017, the only female to take a company public was Katrina Lake with Stitch Fix. This year, it was Eventbrite. So we're not seeing a lot of it, and I think it's hard to see to be what you can't see. But at the same time, when I decided to make the decision, it was an enormous risk, because it put my family in a really different financial position than me starting one. Because when we decided to build more, you know, we were, for the first Riveter, I had to sign a personal guarantee for the space, for the lease. And we needed different childcare, and so that was a different cost to the family. But at the same time, I can tell you that for me, the risk has made the reward so much more. Like when we get one step further and make one more deal and open one more space, it feels amazing and it's incredible. And at the end of the day, I think the risk has made it really, really amazing. And I think the question I always ask myself, and I asked myself this when my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, asked me to move here with him when he got a job at Amazon, will I regret not taking the risk or just not knowing? And the question for me is, or the answer for me is always, I'd regret it if I didn't take the risk, even if I failed, because you learn so much in failing. So it's worth it always just to take the bat and swing it.
Awesome, thank you. Actually, in evaluating a lot of my own professional choices, I always ask myself kind of the same question. Like, it would be easier to go, and if it doesn't work, you can always come back to where you are, or not go and always wonder what if. And so far, it hasn't proven me wrong. Yep. So actually, in the interest of time, we are going to cover the next 3 topics, and we'll have one of our panelists answer each one. And a lot, again, as I said, a lot of the comments were very similar, so I think the sense is really shared among all of us. So for the first one, Christina, would you give us some examples of embracing the uncomfortable and what that has meant to you in your career?
Yeah, so nothing is comfortable, like nothing. Every time I do something new, I'm terrified, I'm uncertain, I don't know if I can really do it, but I kind of have this burning itch. I've just got to try, because similar to Amy, I've learned that the only things in life I regret are the things I don't do. Even the mistakes I've made, I don't regret them because I've learned something from them. And in terms of embracing the uncomfortable, a good example is actually this leap to start a company. And it was actually kind of interesting to work at a VC firm for 4 years, because it was like I got to peek behind the curtain and see the little wizard pulling the levers. And my first 2 years I was there, I had straight up imposter syndrome. Only woman at the table, 20 years younger than everyone else, wondering why the heck was I there, you know, nowhere near the qualifications. But within, you know, the first couple of years, I started to be the one that got parachuted in to help CEOs fix the problems that they were having, restructure the company, get their cash flow under control, make sure their hiring plan was on point with their strategy, and go through and actually dive in detail to help them fix things. And pretty soon I became known as the person who did that. And so they started to send me to more and more companies. And it got to the point where about half my job was sitting there hands-on helping the CEOs CEOs fix whatever their challenges were. And the other half of my job was sourcing new investments and looking for new deals. And it was at that point that I realized, you know what, there's a lot of people who come in here and pitch. Every Monday we have our Monday meeting, we see CEOs come and pitch their companies. And all of these people coming in, predominantly guys, they know something that has got them to where they are, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that they don't know, that they're totally unqualified to know, that they've got no experience knowing. And that's where I end up adding value. And I thought, I'm sitting here feeling uncomfortable and lacking confidence in my own ability to go do this at this level, at this scale, because I think I have to know everything in order to go do it. And I don't. I'm smart. I work hard. I'll figure it out. And if I don't know, I'm going to ask somebody. It's not that big of a deal. And so it got to that point where after peeking behind the curtains and seeing how this really works, I realized the only difference between the entrepreneurs out there who are going out there and raising venture funding to go and start their software companies and me was that they had the courage to try. And that was literally it. There was no hidden game, no hidden agenda, no anything that I needed to do or prove before I could go do this. I just had to have the courage to try. I had 15, 20 years of software experience. I'd started companies before. Granted, they were piddly little things, but I'd done it before. And so I thought, gosh, going back to that whole thing of I only regret the things I don't do, I just thought, I'm just going to embrace being uncomfortable and throw it all on the line and just throw myself into an arena where I'm not going to know a whole bunch of stuff. And I just have to go and figure it out and just embrace it and make it part of the journey.
Thank you very much, Christina. In the interest of time, we only have a few minutes, so we'll go through the next two, just a minute or two each. So Carly, the importance of authenticity.
Yes, so this is something that I think about a lot. So I consider myself a recovering people pleaser. And when you are a people pleaser, it's easy to be swayed by other people's opinions all the time, day and night. You think you're going to go one direction. Somebody gives you some input. You think that sounds good. I'm going to go that direction. But the problem with that is that you then never have your own authentic self or your opinion. And as a CEO or somebody in a C-suite, you are there to provide the vision and guidance to your team. And that doesn't mean that you don't actively listen or solicit input. But at the end of the day, you need to be the one that's going to make the tough decisions. And you can't do that when you're constantly worried about making everybody else happy. So to me, that's been one of the biggest things in my career that I've had to learn to overcome and find ways to deal with it. I think when you have a natural tendency for that, it's something that continuously does pop up. So just even being able to recognize what that is and confront it in the moment, that can really help you deal with that and find that authenticity and find your own voice.
Well said. Thank you. And Amy, would you like to give us some advice or some experiences that you've learned along the way, especially in tech, on the way to the C-suite?
I find this question funny because I'm a lawyer, I'm not in tech, but we are. And something I didn't know 2 years ago is you don't have to have a technical background to start a technical company. I think that's like a secret that they keep behind a door, but we should all know, because you can find a technical co-founder and you can do it. I mean, the thing about tech and leadership in tech is the numbers for women are still astoundingly low, and they should shock us all. But the other side of it is we can sit around and we can be angry. And there are definitely times when I've been out raising money and I'm like, women only get 2% of VC funding. This is bullshit. I can't do it, but I have to do it. And so whatever the numbers are against you, you have to go and do the thing. And by doing the thing, you show that you belong at the head of the table. We belong anywhere we want to be, and we can get there. You can get there by leaning into the support of friends in the same community. I mean, Christina has definitely given me advice along the way. And you can also do that by leading into male allies who will also help you along the way as well. But again, I think we belong anywhere we want to be, and the thing is in the doing.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll all be around this afternoon if you'd like us to ask us any questions personally. But thanks a lot. And thank you, everybody.